15 minutes and I'll rewire your brain about every single thing that comes into section in investing. And this has come from someone that owns multiple properties at 20 years old. Bought my first house at 20 years old. Has helped countless other people buy in their early 20s. People that own multiple properties at 19 years old working with us. People that bought multiple units at one time working with us. Everything. And this is no sugarcoating, no bullshit. You will never need to watch another video about section investing because you're going to learn all of the real insights in regards to how this whole thing works and have all the myths and misconceptions debunked in this whole video. And let me go straight into it because I'm running out of time. The first thing is section investing is not a business model. It is an investment model. A lot of people come into this and think that they're going to go and buy one property, they're going to retire. That's not how it works. There are methods to be in a position where something along those lines can work in terms of doing a burr essentially buying the property, renting it out. Buying property, rehabbing it, renting it out, refinancing and repeating. But that in and of itself is the business model, is the money that you get back when you take the loan out against the property and its new value. That is not section investing in regards to an active income model. That is the burr method. That is completely different things in that same regards. So you need to understand that and understand that the whole goal is to be in a position where you go and get your active income right, and then you offset the amount of hours you have to work because you go and invest that money into buying properties that are going to pay you back. So that's the first thing, is that it's not a business model. It is an income stream that is generated from the investment and the money you put into it. The other thing, investing in real estate is not cheap, and it's not a matter of just money. What I mean this is the investment of time and energy alongside money, because it comes down to those three pillars, right? You have to understand that real estate investing comes into those three pillars in determination if it's going to be worth it for you or not. You have to also understand that there's opportunity cost in this time, energy, and money allocation. You have to see if it's worth it for you in regards to a comparison of what makes more sense for you in terms of the current active income that you are making. If you're in a position where you're working extensively long hours, it make more sense for you to just buy some property that's turnkey, rent it out, buy your time back, get that cash flow. It will not make sense for you to go and try to do burrs, do flips, all of the above, because you don't have the time and energy allocation for that. And the opportunity cost that you could be allocating in terms of time and energy would be better placed off in the endeavor that you're making money in currently, which is probably something along the lines of sales or some more of the consulting along with that regard. The next thing, real estate is going to involve multiple costs, right? Obviously, that's a given. But the biggest one that a lot of people do not talk about, and I've probably never seen any single fucking Section 8 person talk about, is holding costs. Holding costs are going to be probably second to closing costs, because closing costs can be negotiated. Holding costs sometimes will not be able to be negotiated because you already own the property. And you can factor in before and do a creative office structure. That's a different conversation. You have to understand that with this regard, holding costs is the same three pillars trifecta that I talk about, is time, energy, and money. Holding costs can be the smallest to most grand thing that you want to factor in before you even look at the property, even fucking have your realtor walk it or you walk it yourself. That is remedy repairs to Section 8. That is the time and allocation in regards to getting the property to pass Section 8 inspection. That's the utility bills you have to pay for the contractors to be working on your house. That's the fucking miscellaneous water bills that have to be paid while water's running through your house where you're not even living in. The other thing you have to factor in that same regard is also the timelines in regards to if something doesn't work out right. Say, for example, a section inspector has to reschedule. Say the fucking property didn't pass and it fails, and you have to fucking go again. And you have the mortgage payment in front. All of this shit adds up and is real. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. They want to act like it doesn't exist. It is very fucking real. Another thing you want to go about, and this is the other thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, is that there are multiple methods of financing properties that do not get brought into consideration. People just say, oh, buy DSCR, seller finance. Seller finance is not something that you're going to go on, someone's going to come to you and say, hey, I want to sell my property, come and fucking give me $5,000 down, and you're going to be all in for that. Whoever tells you that shit, just run for them, because it's a bunch of bullshit. It's happened to multiple people that I know that are now in our program, experienced it the first time with other bullshit. They came to us, they got the first property within 2 months after buying into all that bullshit. Does it exist? Yes, properties can be bought with very low amount of money down. I've even got paid to buy properties, but it's very rare. And if someone's marketing like that's what's going to happen to you, most of the time they're selling a dream. The other regard is that the other types of financing and how much it actually costs for you to get into the properties is completely dependent on the way that you make your money and what state you're buying in. The way that you make your money, if you're W-2, your 1099, your W-9, what's the other? There's like other ones like W-4, other shit like that. If you have proof of income, it's going to be a lot less costly depending on the state that you're in, because you can put 3 to 5% down. With that being said, you have to factor in your closing costs, your holding costs, your miscellaneous, your vacancy, all of the above. So it's very situational. If you want to have a whole analyzation audit, just hit me up and I'll see if I can help you out. You have to factor that in. So if you take the property's purchase price, say, properties in your area are $300,000, put 5% down, you do a house hack play, you're already $15,000 in. You have another 3% in closing costs. That's another $9,000. So you're at $23,000. Then you have another $4K in closing costs. Now you're at $27,000 all in. You have to factor that shit in, and you always want to operate with a worst case scenario mentality as in terms of the possibility, but then push for the best. Push for the idea that maybe the seller's not going to pay for any of your fucking closing costs, right? Also, that you're not going to be able to find a tenant, right? Say, for example, it's going to take you from 14 to 90 days. Operate with that mentality in regards to things are not going to go the right way. That same predicament. Section 8 properties in regards to the timeline allocation is going to be from fucking 30 to 90 days in terms of going from you closing to you being in a position where you actually go and have your first check from Section 8 because of the Section 8 inspection passing, having to go and get the deposit, and then the 30-day cycle in regards to after the move-in date, that's when you go and get paid, and then obviously it's guaranteed from the government. In that same regard, it is not guaranteed that they're going to pay you the full market rent. That's why you need to operate in a mentality where you go off of 80% of what the market rent is. If a property for a 4-bed, 1 bath is going to be $1,600, you need to operate as if it's going to be $1,600 divided by 1320. $320, $1,632. I believe that's 300. They're like $1,280, right? So $1,280. If your payments, say for example, fucking $700 a month, you're making like $300 a month after property management, water bill, all the above. So you have to factor it in as a conservative note, because then if it goes and ends up in your benefit, obviously you're better off. But at the same time, in the case that they go and offer you 80% of what the market rent is, you're not in a situation where you were barely profitable 100%. Now you're fucking upside down this property that you can't sell because it's too recent of a purchase. So this is shit that nobody's gonna talk to you about. Another thing that you have to think about is that you're also in a predicament where just because something is Section 8 does not mean that it is going to be a better property. That is just 100% the truth. And the reason why is because Section 8 doesn't always make sense, right? And the reason why I say that is just because there's some times where the property is in a position where it would make more rent if it rented out to a cash tenant. It would be faster, so the time and energy allocation would be better if it went to a cash tenant because of the neighborhood that you're buying in and the buy box of that property. For example, if you buy on like the far west side of like Cleveland, for example, it makes more sense to just go with the cash tenant because then you're going and getting a faster turnaround time. With that being said, you still have a tenant that's going to pay on time, simply for the fact of the demographic that you're dealing with, and in regards to them being people that work actively, they're in a position where it's a nicer area, they have better jobs, and in that same regard, you're in a position where you don't have to deal with the Section 8 turnaround in regards to that timeline. And then if people are on Section 8, most of the time their jobs aren't in that area. It's too far of a commute because you know the specific areas, it makes more sense to stay within them. Alongside that, if you're in a position where you see a high rent rate for a bedroom count, not only are you cutting it by 80%, but just because that bedroom count it has a high rent rate does not mean it is the property location that you would want to buy. The reason why I say that is because most of the time the government's in a position where they're going and offering that amount of rent that's higher, on the higher end, even if the properties are on the lower price end, which can even put you at the 1 or 2% rule, which would be fucking crazy in regards to like a retrospect without having this insider knowledge I'm giving you, is that they're giving you the higher rent because they want you to go and invest in these areas that are not that good. And people won't tell you that. People will say, hey bro, you're gonna make the most amount of rent there, your mortgage is gonna be fucking $600, $700, $800. But if you're receiving $2,000 a month and your mortgage is $800, but you're dealing with miscellaneous bullshit, headaches, and tenant turnover because they don't want to live there anymore, it's not worth it in terms of time, money, energy allocation, because you have to think about those 3 pillars. I always touch upon them because they're very fucking important. Another thing that I want to talk about that a lot of people don't talk about is that the most important thing you're going to have to find are people that have done exactly what you want to do, and alongside that, people that are actively doing what you want to do. In that same regard, actively looking for people that are in positions where they are better at what they do than you. Property management, I don't want to deal with anything in property management. I have the best property managers that I think are in those fucking markets. With that same regard, the reason why I say that is just because I understand that they are doing actively what I want to do, which is continue to buy deals, fucking add to their portfolio, and alongside that, grow their brands. That's why I work with our property managers. That's why I work with our realtors, our lenders, and you have to be around the right people, because real estate can be a very fucking dirty business in regards to people, and you have to protect yourself. And you have to also understand that as an investor, you are in control. You as an end buyer are in control, because if you don't buy, the property, seller doesn't sell, the listing agent doesn't get paid, your buyer's agent doesn't get paid, the lender doesn't get paid, title doesn't get paid, transaction doesn't happen, because a property is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. If you're not willing to buy it, then it's just gonna sit there. Even if somebody else is gonna buy it, they're only gonna be in a position where they pay for what they believe it's worth, and alongside that, what the bank believes it's worth, and what terms end up coming to a conclusion. But that same regard, buyers in control. Bottom fucking line. Damn, this is a lot of ripping off at the fucking top of the dome, but I think that I've covered a lot of shit, but I want to keep going into it. When you are investing into Section 8, you need to use every fucking resource that you have. Whether it's using business credit, whether it's using your W-2s, whatever the fuck. You do not get the luxury of going and saying, I want to buy a property with no money when you have no money and you've never bought any property, because you have no position of authority to be saying that bullshit. You have to go and use every fucking resource you have, like I did. I went and used business credit. I fucking spent money that I didn't even have, and that allowed me to build a fucking 7-figure portfolio in a matter of 9 months. Bought 9 units in 9 months. From 20 to 21 years old, I'm still fucking 21. And you have to also understand that there is a price and there's a cost to absolutely every fucking thing that you do. The price sometimes feels very fucking expensive, but when you get the fucking cost of not doing the opposite or even that said action, whether it's paying that fucking price, it's going to be a lot heavier, it's going to be a lot worse, and it's going to feel like it could have been avoided because it really could have. For example, when I was initially in a position where I was like, oh, let me try and like sub-manage my units over here in California. That price that I was saving and not paying in terms of the property management fee was not worth the fucking cost and the headache and bullshit that I dealt with. And you're always going to deal with bullshit. That's just the bottom line. That's another thing I want to go into. You're always going to deal with bullshit in real estate. Whether it's delays, whether it's fucking people, whether it's the weather, always going to be bullshit, and that's just something you have to accept. That's it. Another thing is that real estate is not going to make you rich overnight, because of this misconception that you're going to buy 2 properties, you're going to live off your cash flow. Cash flow is very fucking helpful in regards to your day-to-day expenses, all the regards. But it's not going to be in a position where it just retires you fucking overnight in that regard. And the reason why I talk about this and intertwining it with the bullshit that you deal with is because when you deal with this bullshit in terms of the messaging and stuff that you'll deal with realtors that are not vetted, which, for example, if they say, hey, this property's going to make $500 a month because they're just subtracting the mortgage and the rent rate and maybe fucking $50 in water bills, you realize that it's a bunch of bullshit they're trying to sell you. Alongside that, you see the bullshit because they're not a lender, so they wouldn't know what the fuck payment terms are for your specific situation. In that same regard, you're not going to be able to live off the cash flow. What does $500 going to really do for you in regards to fucking moving towards retiring, right? Another thing is leverage is very powerful, but too much of it is not the fucking move. And this is for someone that went back to back, dropping like fucking 50K in 1 month, boom, buying this property. I bit off more than I could chew, and then I chewed it. But for everyone's situation, it does not make sense for do what I fucking did. And what I continue to do, which is now I'm trying to buy this primary, which again, it probably make sense for my situation, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't make sense for your situation, maybe it does. And you have to know your fucking limit in the sense of very stretched out, but at the same time not have a preconception or philosophy of what your limit actually is, right? Until you really put yourself to the test is when you know what that limit is. And just because there is stress that's going on from this fucking, this stretching that's happening, it's really growth. But sometimes, for example, it could really fucking stress you the fuck out and it could not be worth it. Like I wouldn't recommend, like I mentioned, the stuff that I did in terms of scaling and even the way that I started for most people, right? But that comes down to, your risk tolerance, factoring your 3 pillars, and alongside that being in a position where you allocate everything properly the way that I did. Properly the way that makes sense for you, and not just doing it the way that I did. The last thing that I want to touch upon is that there is a lot of bullshit in regards to the Section 8 space online, and you have to understand there's still good people in there. And alongside that does not mean that you go and take good people that seem good for fucking 100%, not necessarily for granted, but just like if everything that they're saying is just 100% true, right? That should be a given no matter what, right? In that same regard, you have to understand that in real estate, there are a lot of people that are going to be trying to cover their own ass. And if someone's not as transparent as possible from the fucking jump and willing to be in a position where they're telling you straight up how everything's going to be working and not sugarcoating everything, and seeing how they treat you in regards to when you don't directly benefit them in that regard, and alongside that, how fast and responsive and punctual they are, you are going to be in for a very rough ride. Because if you just say, hey, this person has a lot of followers, you know, maybe this person does a lot of deals, does that mean that they're the people for you? Like, for example, I prefer to work with realtors, lenders, brokers, or just people that are maybe like an 8 out of 10 in the industry, and they're still fucking striving for the top. There's someone's at the very top. At the very top, they're either complacent, they think that they're the shit, or they're in a position where it just doesn't make sense, simply for the fact that they're on a different stage in their career and we're not really growing at the same time. If you have any other questions in regards to anything with Section 8, because I know this is off the cuff, me just ripping off of absolutely everything that I could think of off the dome, then just DM me, leave a comment below. But I want you guys to really understand and rewire everything in your mind in terms of the bullshit you heard of, like, oh, 5%, you know, 5K down, 5K fucking rehab, and then you're gonna be all in. Not that. Another last thing I'll leave you. When you see those properties, like, oh, you're gonna buy for 70K, and then your payment's gonna be like $400. Most of the time, there's not gonna be lenders that are gonna be able to lend that low. Alongside that, you're gonna be in a position where if they do, it's gonna be for a fix and flip, which I don't really or a fix and flip or a rehab loan, which I don't really recommend if it's your first property. You don't need W-2s to get started. You don't need pay stubs. You don't need fucking 1099s. You don't need perfect credit. You just need to get a pair of balls and you just run that shit up. But if you see that bullshit about those fucking properties that are 50 grand, they exist, but it's just not always worth it. Depending on the acquisition strategy that you have, if you're looking at something similar to mine. And like I mentioned, those lenders may not lend that low in that regard. But yeah, if you have any questions, leave it down below. DM me. You know everything you need to know. You know more than what I knew when I first started. So there's no reason you can't take action and see results. Okay, so catch you. Peace.